So we lose Flyboy. He gets shot in the elevator, and then the zombies get him in the elevator. Now, I think he's a great zombie when he comes back. He's actually scary looking, I thought.
He's the best zombie George has ever done.
He's awesome.
Like, just
the foot turned around, and he's so good. Hello, my armies of the undead, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Scary Movie Project. I am your host, Matt. During an escalating zombie epidemic, two Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter, and his TV executive girlfriend seek refuge in a secluded shopping mall. Now, if I just said that, you obviously know what I'm talking about. Talking about 1978, 79, we'll figure that out, right? Dawn of the Dead, original George Romero, Dawn of the Dead, not to be confused with the remake, which we'll talk about also. That is our topic for today, and it's a great movie. We love it, right? But I know somebody who really loves Dawn of the Dead. You know Matt Blazi. He's a Blair Witch connoisseur. He's the expert. He wrote the book, 8 Days in the Woods. You know it. You love it. But he loves Dawn of the Dead. So, Matt, I'm glad you're here so we can talk about zombies. Thank you for coming on the program.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, Dawn of the Dead is my favorite film of all time. It is one of the very first films I remember watching as a kid. For some reason, and I will always credit my dad for this, he taped Dawn of the Dead probably in 82, 83, 84 on the movie channel, for one of the movie channels. Because in the early 80s, my dad had a VCR, and I'm too young to remember why. Because by the time I was a teenager, my dad didn't really care about movies or taping stuff. But for some reason, he taped Dawn of the Dead.
It's amazing.
And he taped it on the same, and then he taped it and then taped Superman 3 right afterwards. Yes. So I was a Superman kid from the start.
It's a good one.
To get to Superman 3, I had to watch Dawn of the Dead. And I was unknowingly introduced to what is, to me, the greatest zombie film of all time. And I was watching that probably from around the age of 3.
Oh, my God.
And it was like one of those, I would sleep on the living room floor on a Friday night.
Yep.
I would wake up on Saturday and I'd pop that tape in. And it would just start with Dawn of the Dead. And I'd watch Dawn of the Dead and then Superman 3. And then eventually my dad taped Superman 4 after that. So I had I still have that tape. It's still that VHS tape is still in my collection.
Richard Pryor, Superman 3, right?
Yeah, Richard Pryor, Superman 3, Robert Vaughn, like
Yes.
the big outlier in the original Christopher Reeve thing. But still, to me, one of the greatest scenes in Superman movie history is where he fights himself.
Yes.
And when he finally chokes out his evil self and he stands up and they get that shirt rip and that and it's like, oh man, it still gives me chills. Like, so like Dawn of the Dead and Superman 3 are to me like a double feature that I could do every day of my life and never get tired of. But Dawn of the Dead from a young age, that mall looked like my shopping mall, the Harrisburg East Mall.
Sure.
Like Penny's was in the same area in the middle of the mall.
That's awesome.
And it had the plants, it had a fountain, it gave me that vibe. So when I'd go to that mall on like a Saturday with my mom, it would feel like I was in the Dawn of the Dead mall.
That's amazing. Let me ask you this. I love stories of people when they first see these movies, but their stories are so great. But let me ask you this. As great as the movies are, how great are the commercials now that you go back and watch from the recording from the 80s? Are they still there, and is that awesome?
No, these were off the premium channels. These were not off of TV. These were not off TV.
All right.
So, no, I do have some recordings that have the commercials from the 80s. And, we all know those jingles. And, nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Yeah,
and you can turn that on. You just want a dose of something from when you were a kid. You can find a recording that has, I have a G.I. Joe, A Rise of Serpentor.
Oh, my God.
When they introduced Serpentor, it was a 5-part miniseries of like half-an-hour episodes.
Yeah. At
one point, they showed them as a movie on my local Fox channel. And it has all of those commercials. And it was like 85, 86.
That's great.
And every once in a while I have that ripped to digital so I don't have to run the tape. And I turn it in and I'm like, oh my God, I remember these commercials. And it's just looking at the prices of stuff and just the styles. Like, there's nothing, so nothing beats a nostalgia trip like that.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So let's be nostalgic, right? And let's talk. All right, so 1978, because, so it's got an association with Italy and Dario Argento, who you horror fans, of course, know and love, Suspiria, Opera. He financed, right? He was a co-financier on this, I guess, because he wanted to make his own cut. right?
He put up some financing, and he has the non-English speaking world rights. So
Yep.
pretty
With
much
different
anything
music.
outside of England and Australia, Dario owns the rights to make his own cut.
Yep.
And he had invited George to Italy for a couple of weeks to stay at his house or a house to finish the script. And that, I think, really helped. And Dario was like, "Hey, I got the Goblin,
Goblin,
band
yes. Yeah.
to, we can put some music in." And the Argento cut as a teenager was a mystical thing, because that was before really importing anything could really happen. You had to find someone that potentially like had gone to Italy and come back and made you a copy. Like I didn't see the Argento cut till I was 18.
Yeah.
I bought a VHS bootleg at Chiller Theater in October of '99, and I came home and I was like,
VHS and DVDs at shows. Those are great.
And it was such a weird thing. Like, it was like watching the movie for the first time. It was like new dialogue, new sound effects, new music, alternative takes, deleted scenes put back in that we would say now. And it was like watching the movie for the first time.
That was fun. Back when, like, I don't know, I mean, DVDs are still a thing. I mean, people love them, right? But yeah, I remember I used to go to shows, and I remember getting the Halloween 6 producer's cut on like a bootleg DVD that had like the macro vision, so it was all dark and light sometimes.
It still had the time codes at the bottom.
Yes, and now you can buy. These are all a special edition. You can get them anywhere. But yeah, back then it was awesome to get them.
And what made it great is it was like a 7th or 8th generation dub.
Yeah,
so the quality was like really low,
so bad,
and it was like shaky. There was tracking marks. Like I always say, with all these boutique labels putting out a 4K edition, give us a VHS copy.
There you go.
On there. Like we were like uncolor corrected. Like literally they put it in the deck, they digitize it and throw it on as a special feature. I would watch that probably more than the 4K version.
Yeah.
Because that's how we watched this stuff.
Yeah.
Back in the 80s and 90s as kids.
Yep. All banged up. Oh yeah, absolutely. Tracking issue with the remote. Oh my God. So yeah, so Argento releases the Italian one got released in 78, when I think in the United States though it was released technically in 79. Is that right?
Well, and that's been a point of contention lately. So it had a film festival premiere in 78.
Okay.
It didn't get released wide in the States until 79.
Yeah.
At this point, it's always been done 1978. And it's you're not going to change it. It doesn't change anything in the annals of history.
It doesn't matter.
It's just become synonymous, where it's had its first public viewing in 1978, but it wasn't released to the public until March or April 79. So it's always going to be Dawn 78. I think it just works better. I mean, we had Halloween in 78.
That's right.
78 was a good year for film.
It was a good year.
Like 78, 84, 85.
80 was great. 80 was great.
80,
Shining.
82. We had those years where we just associate with great horror films.
Absolutely.
Dawn, let's keep it 1978. It's
fine with me.
That's totally fine. I'm not gonna argue with anyone that wants to say, "Oh, well, it was 1979." Well, you know what? We could still watch the movie now in 2024, so it doesn't matter when it was released.
Watch it whenever. It's more like a trivia piece. I kind of just think, no one cares, right? Yeah. So 78 or 79, whatever you want to do. So everyone's seen Night of the Living Dead, I hope, and this is, I mean, the sequel. It's sort of yes, no. I mean, the characters are different, whatever. But so the zombie apocalypse has come, like it's here, and it starts off. There's this news crew. And they don't know what they're talking about. And, of course, our director of our news crew is none other than George Romero in the cameo there. And they're talking about what's the heck's going on in martial law and this and that. And, the whole world's going to crap. And they don't know what to do. And you see one of the guys, Stephen Flyboy, comes in. He's a news reporter, flies the helicopter, says, "I'm getting the hell out of here," tells his girlfriend to come. We switch to this scene of these SWAT folks busting up this low rent, in the hood kind of apartment complex, I guess.
They're projects. They're
supposed to turn over like they're like the dead, I guess, back to them, right? Yeah, they're in the projects, and that's just a great kind of political or statement he makes there too, with why they're going after these folks, and it's crazy because the violence just like starts. And it's just blowing people's heads off. And this one cop, he's just opening doors with shotguns and just blasting people's heads off. And that's when you see like the first zombie where he's kind of lurching around, and his wife or his girlfriend comes and grabs me. He just grabs her and bites her neck, and you start to see like the first Tom Savini effect, right? And so one of them, I guess, then we finally see Ken Foree, who is of course the Dawn of the Dead superstar, right? We love him. And he says, "I'm out of here," and he brings, is it Roger, his other guy with him? That's right. So it's Peter,
Scott
Roger.
Reiniger.
Yep. And they all four of them take off, and they end up at the Monroeville Mall, which now they never name it. They never name the mall in the movie, though, right? It's just the mall.
No,
right?
no. You can see some of the decals for the mall on the doors.
Okay, that's right.
It was one of the, it opened in 1969.
Yeah.
It was one of the first and largest indoor malls. And that was, George did know the owner and was given a tour, and that was kind of like the owner basically said, well, there's spaces where people can hide and we can survive back here, and that just kind of planted the seed for George. It was like, oh, well, we could do a zombie apocalypse, because he didn't really have any intention of doing another zombie film,
right?
And the way George's mind works, like, okay, well, what happens if we do this? Zombies in a shopping mall.
Zombies in a shopping mall.
And again, consumerism at that point had really started to catch on. We were spending more money. We were, I guess, prospering. I wasn't born in 1978, so I think we were coming out of the gas crisis. Vietnam was over.
That's right.
We were kind of back to normal.
That's right.
And now we could go to the shopping mall and we can ice skate, we can get food, we can get all of our clothes, we can get entertainment. Like, it was a destination.
Yeah.
And even in the 80s and 90s, the mall was a destination. Like, you only went, if I went to the mall, I didn't go to the mall on a Tuesday night with my parents. So they saved that till like a Saturday.
That's right. That's right.
It was a trip, and you didn't go for just one thing and leave. Like, you were in the mall for hours.
You go see movies, whatever. Yeah.
So it was just one of those things where we were just flocking out in public to buy things.
Yeah.
And
buy crap.
And George saw that, and the way George saw it was like, wow, we're like the zombies. And he ran with it. And that's kind of how he started the story of Dawn.
Yeah. So they're in the mall, right? And they blockade themselves, and they start setting up the trucks and everything to cover the entrances. And they know in and out, and they kind of hide the walls and things, and they have their little setup going. And it's pretty cool, because you think about, like, what would you do if you were in that spot like that? I mean, it's the perfect place, right? You've got food, you've got all these things, you've got everything you need there, essentially, right? There's a gun store that's in there, of course. And the zombies, and once you start seeing the zombies, it's kind of where they're almost comical in a way, right? Because they're just like painted gray or blue, and they're not that frightening, but there's a whole bunch of them. And they're pretty mean, and those the Hare Krishna zombie is like the best one, right? That keeps showing up,
and they were characters.
Exactly.
I mean, think about it. When you look at zombie films, there's one or two lead zombies that kind of stand out.
Yeah,
George made these zombies a character. So we have the Hare Krishna zombie.
Yeah.
We have
the nun.
Jace. We have the nun.
We
have Jay Stover, who had the guns. He must have been a gun aficionado in his former life. So every one of these characters really stood out and added that extra flavor that I don't think we have seen in a lot of zombie films. But again, you always get the main zombie who always stands out, and then you have a couple in the background. But it doesn't think of the zombie performances when you have Sharon Hill and Clayton Hill, the nurse zombie and the sweater zombie.
The nurse zombie, I forgot about the nurse zombie. Yeah.
So the way they looked, George is famous for saying, I didn't want to teach these people how to be zombies because everyone would do the same thing.
That's right.
You're slow moving, you're dead. But they have that wonderment, that amazement. Their brains are functioning at a very basic level, so everything is wonderment. They're trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
But they're mimicking what they did in real life, and that shows up in the movie where Dave Emge, some kind of instinct memory, what they used to do, they were drawn to that place. Now,
that's right.
Did all these people die in their homes and walk to the mall? I don't know. Maybe they got caught out in the traffic and just ended up they recognized this place.
Right.
So it just adds that extra level of why are these zombies here, and they hear the disturbance in the mall, and they just they keep congregating there, and adding zombies as a character and not as a plot device, I think, was a wonderful choice that a lot of people don't do anymore. And outside of that one zombie, that everyone's got to have that main zombie, but the zombies are just as much a character because it's almost sometimes like George spends a lot of time with the zombies. There's a lot of establishing shots of these zombies walking around.
Yeah.
And then the monologue with Richard France, like showing them playing with the mannequins and the cash register.
Yeah.
It's almost like a childlike wonderment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they trying to be human again? But they have no clue that they're doing this.
No, they have no idea. No. And so also I think it's interesting is, everything, George sets his stuff, Pittsburgh always. This is supposed to be Philly, though, technically, I think, right? Isn't that the whole thing with this, though, also?
Well, they start in Philly.
Right. The news station and everything.
And in helicopter, Ken asks where they are, Harrisburg, and you say, oh, passed about an hour ago.
Yep, that's right.
So Philly to Harrisburg by driving is about 5 hours.
Yep.
By helicopter, it should probably be very short, probably about the same time, because helicopter can move pretty fast. So, no, they don't really establish that it's Pittsburgh. Even on the TV, they don't make any reference to where they are. Now, right before they land at the airport, they have the scene with all the National Guard and the firemen. You can see where it says Monroeville on it.
Yeah.
So it's not as important. The mall is a character, but not where the mall is a character.
Right.
Where they kind of establish it's in Evans City.
Yep.
It's out in the country. But the Monroeville Mall itself is the character. That mall could have been in anywhere, because it's a self-contained. Yeah, but if you know George, it's Pittsburgh.
Absolutely,
everything relates to Pittsburgh somewhere.
Pittsburgh. That's right.
Any of George's films could have taken place in Pittsburgh, minus like 1 or 2 films.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for them to fly all the way for like through the day and then overnight, they must have made multiple stops. When you're talking in storyline, like they made multiple stops to get all the way to Western PA.
Of course. I love the scene when they're stopping for gas and they're at the fill up spot, and the zombie, of course, the zombie that walks up and gets his head cut off with the blades. It's great. But then the zombie kids, how about the zombie kids that Peter finds in when he's going back in there, and he sees the coffee machine, 20 cents for the coffee, and he hears the noise and he starts shooting through the doors, and these 2 little kids come out and attack him, and he's going to shoot him, and they don't show you actually like blasting the kids, but like aftermath or whatever. But it's funny because these zombies, you have to look at this kind of, you have to, your mindset of when you first saw this, because we all first saw this before all these zombie movies that we see today. So like they're not really necessarily scary or whatever. They're not like chasing after you, but if they get a hold of you, they're going to rip your neck off. They're going to eat you, right? They're going to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like they are frightening, but they're just so. It's like watching The Simpsons from like season 1, and then the drawing of them to now, like the evolution of them kind of thing. Yeah. So then they're scary because then in those scenes when they're in the mall and they're opening the big door at Penny's, remember when he shuts it and he locks it? Those are like, like I'm tense watching, like close the door, close the door, close the door. When he gets like the torch and he drops it, and Steven, and he's surrounded by like 15 zombies, and you're like, oh dude, he's dead. There's no way he's gonna. But he gets out. So you kind of have to like rethink that and not jump the gun and think he's going to get attacked quickly. So, and then they're living it up, right? They're in the mall and they have a gun store and there's food whenever they want, and they can go ice skating, like you said, and they can do anything. And there's this one scene that I find interesting, the social commentary, kind of like the folks that, that are in the projects too, is, the scene where Fly Girl and Fly Boy have dinner. And it's like Ken Forey's like the waiter, and it's this black guy serving this white man and woman, and then he kind of disappears. It's like, what's going on here? But it's interesting. I can't have been an accident. I don't know. George makes commentary, right? So
yeah, and I've never heard that's come up, but
I don't know.
Even in
is it a real thing? I don't know.
I mean, in the 25 years that I've known Ken Forey, he's never really talked about that scene. I think it was just he was doing something nice for them because he recognized that the stress that they were under as expecting parents.
That's right.
They were the 2 people who were not trained to really handle a crisis situation.
No, not at all.
He was doing something nice for them.
Yep.
And he said, this is just for the 2 of you. So I'm assuming the character of Peter said, look, guys, I'm going to cook you dinner tonight and let you guys be, and I'm going to go do my own thing.
Yep.
And I think it was just a way for him to be nice and try to get them to reconnect, because they... Dave Emge, the character of Flyboy, was like, oh my God, this is great. Like, we're here. And she's like, it's not as good as you think. She was really the dissenting voice Peter saw it as something strategic. Dave saw it Steven saw it as a haven, and she's like, this isn't going to last. And he was just trying to give them some sense of normalcy, because if they could have stayed there, they would have had a baby, and that would have added an entirely new dynamic to what was happening. And I think it was just a way for them to slow down more than anything. I mean, it
was good to have in the movie too, because it was
and George never
right.
came out and really said anything about that scene either.
Yeah.
I think it was I think sometimes when you have no, when you have a movie that has so much symbolism and so many messages,
right.
I think sometimes we apply that to the film as a whole, and sometimes we can just stop the movie and say, here's a buddy trying to do something nice for this guy to reconnect with his lady.
Totally.
That's how I've always seen it. I've never read too much into it.
I think so, and you know what? I think it's just because I think, like you said, there's so much to that, and you can read into everything. But does it mean anything? Maybe it means nothing at all, right? So I just know that he likes to put those messages in, so it's like, okay, interesting. But anyway, maybe not. Who knows, right? But yeah, that was a nice moment though, right? Where they actually had a minute to themselves, right? And this is of course after our other Roger. He's kind of loose, and he's kind of running wild with these trucks, and he drops his bag and he gets bitten by the zombies, and you know what's going to happen to him, and he eventually dies. And that great scene where he wakes up and comes back, and you just see Peter with the gun right there, and he blasts him and gets rid of him. They bury him in the mall. They bury him
the voiceover in that scene, I think, helps punch that point home. With Richard Francis, one, his great voice, and two, the writing from George. Ken is getting drunk. Like I mean, you got to think about it. Everybody at that point in the movie, they'd only been in the mall for like 4 days.
Yeah, not long.
So he didn't know Roger before. He didn't know Flyboy and Fran before that. But he had that camaraderie because they were both members of the Philly SWAT. I think the character Peter felt responsible for everybody at this point.
Yeah.
And he was losing someone who could help him with hoarding the zombies, who knew what needed to get done. And he was sad because Scott Reiniger put on a hell of a performance.
He's great. Yeah.
And especially like after getting bit, like he just didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And begging, I don't want to be walking around like that. Like he knew what he was going to have to do, and it wasn't something he was entirely thrilled about having to do. But just that scene is just one of everyone loves and celebrates Ken Foree's performance as an action star, but when you look at how Ken brought a lot of emotion to that character, when he's shooting the zombies in the basement of that tenement, it was years until it came out on DVD that I realized he was crying.
Is that right?
Like I saw him wipe his eye, but if you watch him when he's shooting, like there's a tear running down his face.
Okay.
And it took me until seeing it on DVD. Wow. He was hating what he had to do.
Yeah.
And now he has to do it with someone that was vital to their survival. I mean, had Scott survived till the end, they may have done a little bit better with the zombie horde, or maybe he would have gone crazy then too. Who knows?
Who knows?
But just that scene's always been heartbreaking because he'd only known him for a few days, but they have really bonded.
Yeah.
Over their shared experience with these zombies. So, yeah, that one's always one of my favorites when he pulls that, and just that reveal of him. Even though, like, if you go back and watch the trailer, they spoil that in the trailer.
That's a great shot. Yeah, that's a that image is always.
We talk about movies spoiling, a trailer spoiling the movies now.
Yeah.
Go back and watch trailers from the 70s and 80s. How much more they gave away.
Everything, yeah.
Back in the day. I mean, they gave away Flyboy dying. They gave away, Scotty dying. Yeah. So it was just, but it's still a gut punch, even to this day, to see him like have to, put him down.
Yeah, it's a character you like, exactly. And so that before that, that was, they had the scene where they're driving the car around the mall and everything, and you're like seeing all the fun things they're doing. And then, he died. It's like, okay, now it's the three of them. And you're like, oh, this kind of sucks, right? And you're sitting there thinking, what are they going to do? And then you start to see them, kind of just like taking target practice. And it's kind of like, this is kind of this weird world now we're in where it's like, okay, this kind of sucks and this isn't much fun. And the end of the world, the apocalypse really blows.
Yeah.
And, then, you find out they're on the roof that, and they show what they're doing. He's playing, tennis out there one day and they're hanging out and they're getting angry at each other too. That one scene where, Steven turns on the television, nothing but static. And she comes to sit down and says, I'm tired of this. I don't want to hear it. And he goes, oh, well, something could happen. She goes up and turns the TV off. He gets up, doesn't say anything, and walks right back over, turns the TV back on. You're like, okay, we're starting to get a little angry at each other now. And then you see the scene in the roof with Tom Savini and his other guy. Oh, now we got some folks that are infiltrating here and some other people. And that's when you see the horde of like, okay, then it's like this, group of dudes and, they got all their hunting gear and their camo on and they're like, okay, we're ready to do this. And what do they refer to them? Motorcycle raiders, right? Isn't that what they, they call them? And they pick up and they all head down to the mall. And our crew that's already there is like, okay, we got to do something about this. They try to close the gates and everything. That doesn't do anything. These dudes get in through loading docks and all hell breaks loose, of course. And that's when the kills and the Tom Savini effects kind of start, right? The machete in the head, right? We all remember that one. The screwdriver in the ear, which got recreated in Cabin Fever, one of my favorite movies. I love when he gets him in the ear in Cabin Fever.
Yep.
And just these great scenes. And for me, the word I always use, poster paint red for the blood, because the blood is just so like phony, but it's so great. And like ripping out the intestines, and it's just all these like super simple effects, right? It's bought, like organs from like a butcher shop, and it's just fake, bodies, and it's foam, and it's the easiest things in the world. Tom Savini is, he's a great biker, right? In this movie, he's a biker, and then in Dusk Till Dawn, he's the biker. Like that's his role.
I mean, and the great thing about that is,
so
Tom has been on record a lot of times. They bought the blood from the 3M company.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, Tom's favorite Dick Smith formula for blood. They didn't do anything to it. They didn't darken it.
No.
And
it's great. I love it.
And it works because, again,
totally
Dawn of the
works.
Dead is basically like an homage to the EC Comics
like you
area.
said, it's comic book.
That George was kind of emulating that style. Yeah. So it works super well because the blood is so bright, but it's so vibrant.
It's so good.
And it stands out.
Thick,
but and with the zombies all being gray, Dawn takes place about 3 weeks after night occurs, so there's not a lot of rotting going on, especially because it's in the cold. So we're slowing down the decay a little bit, but the red contrasted with the gray, it pops, and
it totally works.
And I don't know if George ever saw that as a detriment. I know Tom, it's always stood out. I don't think George ever saw that as it's taking away. I think it added to that fact unintentionally. Like, wow, this really pops. Like, okay.
I think the fact we're even having the conversation has to do with the fact that people are probably just giving it crap. No, dude, it's fine. It's what they had at the time. Like, don't hate it. It's great. I mean, I think it's just like people trying to say like, oh, well, it's a low budget. You don't have enough money for real blood. So what?
There's a lot of blood in Dawn of the Dead, but it's when you look at some movies that rely on a lot of blood splatter, there's a lot of blood. When you look at like Tarantino, when the bride is fighting the crazy 88, there's so much blood, and it's like spurting, and
I love it.
There's blood in Dawn, but it's not overly gratuitous.
No, it's not.
It's the right amount to get the point home.
It's exaggerated too, right? It's
a little bit at times, I think. But I think that was more or less Tom like packing the squibs. A lot to get that point, because it's, Dawn is a bright movie.
Yeah.
Night was, black and white.
Mm-hmm.
They used
very
Bosco chocolate syrup.
Nighttime.
And day Tom had perfected that blood formula, and it was a little over the top in places, and the blood ran a little bit, thinner. But for Dawn, it works for the setting that it's in. You have this bright, vibrant movie with this, this mall music that doesn't fit a horror film. There's not a lot of overly foreboding music in there, and there's some great music cues that hit at the right time.
Like the music is great. I love it, and the music in it. It's great. When they're driving around the car and everything. Yeah.
The DeWolf Library is one of the best things that George
footage,
ever did.
Right?
That's stock music. It has been, Waxworks just put out their 3 LP set, and I've been listening to it for years through various means. You find people with CDs of like the full tracks, like listening to the full DeWolf soundtrack. The full tracks, George picks like 4 seconds from like a 3-minute track, and it's just amazing how he sat and listened to this music, and he's like, okay, this 3 seconds is going to go in this part over here.
Right.
And the music is as much of a character in Dawn of the Dead as everything else.
Totally.
And you don't see that a lot anymore. Like, a lot of times, you get this like great rock song, or
Yeah.
you get a cover of another song to kind of fit, the mood or whatever. And it the music is a character, the mall is a character, the zombies are characters,
Yes.
and then the humans are there. So it's a character driven story, not really full of cliches or tropes. And that, I mean, that rings true for a lot of George's films. There's certain things that happen, but are they cliches, or is George making a conscious choice to not make this film be like every other film that he has seen or that other people will see? That's what sets him apart. And I think that the amount of thought that he put into Dawn is evident from the first frame to the last frame.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, biker show, right? They go crazy. Zombies, we see all the great blood we talked about, right? And, they end up, so we lose Flyboy. He gets shot in the elevator, and then the zombies get him in the elevator. Now, I think he's a great zombie when he comes back. He's actually scary looking, I thought.
He's the best zombie George has ever done.
Oh, he's awesome.
Like,
the foot turned around, and he's so good.
Everything about Dave Emge's zombie performance, we love Bub. We love and we celebrate Bub. Yeah, but Dave Emge's performance,
he's awesome.
With that that neck turn, because he had the bite, and he's got that look, and he's got the gun, a gun really still on his finger, and then the ankle turn. It's like
really, really good.
I don't. Dave has always talked about, like, I just did that, but to me, like, when you think about it, when he falls out of the elevator, that would have been the ankle he fell on.
Yeah.
So that ankle's busted.
Yeah. It totally broke.
And I don't know if George has ever come out and he didn't really give Dave any direction. So Dave thought about it. So the brilliance of Dave thinking about, this is going to help. And it's every zombie in that movie was a character, but every person who played a zombie brought something of their own to make that character stand out, whether it was a facial expression, a walk, or a reaction to something. There's just so many levels and layers to Dawn of the Dead that I don't think we will ever stop talking about this film.
There's something you really love like that. You get into it and it goes on and on and on, right? So, and then he comes back and he starts realizing where he's going. Peter pretty much is aware. He's like, look, I know he's going to come back. He knows it's him coming. And she even says, what is that? And he goes, oh, it's Peter. He's come. So we know what's going to happen. He comes in and he doesn't waste any time. He pulls back and blasts his head. All you see, boom, that explosion.
Such a great headshot.
Oh, that was awesome. And then, get out of here, get in. Peter says, he gets his little Saturday night special, whatever, and he puts it to his head and says, I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to kill myself. He decides not to. And she's flying away in the helicopter. He gets out. He gets on the roof. He gets in. They take off to places unknown. And that's where we wrap Dawn of the Dead. Yeah. Now, for me, I'll say, like, okay, now I know you want to get into your thoughts, but I also want to I think that for me, I can't remember when I saw it. I'm 14, 15 maybe, and I remember seeing it. It was great. I loved it. It was this total, like, it's a beer and pizza movie, right? You got to just, like, hang out and watch it. And then I remember playing Resident Evil 2 and being like, this is this movie. Like, this game is this. Like, the SWAT guys with the masks and everything. I was like, oh, my God, this is the movie. This is so much fun. I love this. And I think you mentioned earlier, we were talking earlier about how everything now, Walking Dead, love it. Everything that you see zombie now, as great as it is and how much it might want to, puff its chest out, it needs to stop and it needs to thank Dawn of the Dead, because anything you see now is because of that movie. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dawn resonated. And that's
what makes it what it is.
I think from the start. I mean, there was something about the way George presented zombies really kicked off the 80s. Yeah. It's well known that Fulci literally molded Zombie as trying to be marketed as a sequel to Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, and Zombie's a great film.
Shark fighting a zombie. What else do you really need in cinema than that?
I'm done. And the greatest eyeball kill in cinema history.
I think I have. Yeah, I think it's there.
Yeah, exactly. There. So it's right there. I mean, it's like, when you think about the fact that not only did it inspire, but people celebrate Dawn of the Dead. And George's has said it. Day was his favorite zombie film.
Yeah.
But he always acknowledged the fact that people celebrate Dawn more than any of his other films.
Yeah.
It lends itself to that.
Yeah.
People looked at Dawn and it was like, oh, this is actually kind of neat. Well, what if we did something with zombies? And then we have the next 10 years of zombie films all trace some sort of inspiration back to Dawn. You know,
Cult,
you know, zombies in the 80s all have a look, you know,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was from Thriller, Return of the Living Dead, and Day of the
Return of the
Dead.
Living
Every
Dead, yeah.
zombie kind of looked like that desiccated look with the appliances around the eyes, and they
Yeah,
were
yeah.
kind of gray, but they were rotting more.
Jaundice. Yeah.
Yeah. And but Dawn just from the start ignited something with people with zombies that we have yet to see again. You know, we saw The Walking Dead, you know, which is
so
direct,
good.
you know, Kirkman has said, you know, George Romero was a huge inspiration on this.
Of course.
Greg Nicotero, executive producer.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
many zombie cameos and Easter eggs did Greg put in? Because every time I'd be watching a show or an episode and I'd see Greg was directing, I was on the lookout. Because there was
Sure.
always going to be a zombie
Sure.
that references something from Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, or Night of the Living Dead. You don't have any, you know, you don't, not putting down like Return of the Living Dead, but you don't have any memorable zombies from Return of the Living Dead
What
other
about
than Tarman,
Tarman. Yeah, I was gonna say.
or
Tarman.
the one on the autopsy table.
Yeah.
It's
You're right.
just
Besides
we're
that,
not
yeah.
referencing back to that.
Right.
So George had something there to where he took as much time with the zombies as he did with the people. He made us care
Yeah.
for everything. Like we felt bad for the zombies. Like, yeah, are they the bad guys? They don't know what
Right.
they're doing. They're like animals. You know, you don't.
They're just right, and that's where that whole like consumer, yeah, they're just going back to what they're doing, and you kind of that's where like Walking Dead too, and George even said, what did he say? The scariest thing is the neighbors or something. That was like what he said about Night of the Living Dead, right? Like you're afraid of like the people, not the zombies. You know what they're doing. You're afraid of. That's what happens in these post-apocalypse zombie things is you're afraid of the people. What are the people going to do to you? Who's going to take over where you are? Who's going to kill you for what you have?
The Last
zombies
of
are
Us.
just wandering around eating brain. They
Yeah.
don't care. They don't
Yeah,
care.
The Last of Us is a great, you know,
Yeah.
modern example. You know, it's slightly different, but I mean,
Yeah.
again, think about all the big dramatic episodes that happen are because of people. And
Yeah.
he uses the zombies as a tool. The zombies aren't the villains of the film. It's
No,
the
they're
neighbors.
not.
It's the people that want to take control. I mean, if the motorcycle raiders had just been like, "Hey, can we get supplies and go?" And no, they wanted to take.
Yep.
They
Or
wanted to
trash
take
it.
just as much as we as consumers in the real world wanted to take. We needed more. We needed it needed to be bigger. We needed to have,
Oh, yeah.
you
as
know,
much as
keeping up with
possible.
the Joneses.
Yeah.
You know, we need to
Credit
have a better
card bills
house.
and-
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I forgot to mention the scene with the guy. Don't ask me. I mean, it makes for a great scene. Who knows why he did it in the first place. But he goes to the blood pressure machine, and it's like, why are you doing this when you're attacked by zombies? And then it rips his arm off, and the reading is 0. That's great.
Think about the comedy. You
That
know,
was
George,
really good. That
George
really
was good with subtle comedy.
That was good.
You know, it wasn't his like forte, but like think about it. Like, why was he going to there? Like, there was just something. Like, people were breaking down as much as society was breaking down.
Yeah.
And you know, in the midst of having 30 or 40 zombies around him, he grabs a mannequin to go to the blood pressure machine.
Yeah.
And there's no explanation for it. There's
Right, why are
no
you doing this?
context.
Yeah.
It's just like, literally, it was pretty much, there's a blood pressure machine. Let's figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
Okay. And
All right.
Pat was like, all right, let's go put it in here. And, so it was just.
It works so well. It works so well.
And there's a whole pie fight.
Yes. Oh, the pie fight. The pizza's the pie. Of course.
So again,
Forgot about
at
the
some
pies.
point,
And the music playing is just like perfect for it, right? Yeah.
So like you have this very horrific
like this-
action-packed scene happening.
And they're hitting him with a seltzer, and it's
Yeah.
great. It's
So
great.
I mean, it's just it was how they viewed, they being the motorcycle raiders, how they viewed this entire situation. They weren't taking it seriously. They
No.
saw it as an opportunity to take and do whatever. And it was ultimately their demise. And because they couldn't work with other people with this problem,
That's right.
it just makes it worse, which is ultimately George's message is we can't work together as a society. We're going to go down with the easiest thing happening. There should be no reason, if society was put together better, that we should have progressed out of Night of the Living Dead. Like that problem should have been taken care of.
Yeah, you'd think. So, all All right, so let me ask you this then. Oh, also, I'll start with, so I met George at a con years ago. He's a very nice man. A couple minutes spent with him, whatever. And Ken, met him, too. But you, I think, you got to know George somewhat, didn't you, over the years?
Yeah, I got to know George. I first met him in 2000, and I started spending a lot of time with him at conventions. I worked with him.
He's very tall, by the way. He's like 6'7".
Yeah, George,
Yeah.
you got to have a good neck to look up
Tall
to George,
dude.
because George makes you feel small.
Yeah.
And Ken makes you feel small too.
Yes, Ken is enormous. Ken is enormous. By the way, shout out to, I don't know if anyone, Ken in, I know people hate it. I don't. Him as, what's the character's name? I can't remember his name now. When he's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, I got to give him some love, man. I like that movie. Benny is his character's name.
Yes, Benny. Yes.
I like that movie, and I like him in that movie. Anyway.
Yes, very underseen.
Yes.
Very underseen.
Yes.
No, yeah, George was kind.
Nice guy.
I got to work with George on at quite a few conventions over the years, sitting with him. George made you feel like you were the only fan in the room. And he listened to you.
He did.
He gave you eye contact.
He did.
George was humble as hell, though. George, he knew, but I don't think George ever understood why we loved his movie so much. And, my son's middle name is Romero.
That's awesome.
And I told George that after my son was born. He goes, "Why would you do that to the kid?" In his nice Brooklyn accent. And I said, George, I love you, man. Like you just, I guess,
the artists, the artists don't get it. Like they don't see it. They don't see it.
George was the most normal, unassuming guy that you would ever have met. He's like a Kevin Smith. Like he knows he's done stuff, and he knows people. But at the end of the day, George was George, and I spent a lot of time with George behind the scenes. It was the same George. There wasn't a public persona. He never got like, oh, thank God that's over. I'm so tired. I would watch George sign autographs for 10 hours without getting up from the table.
That's incredible.
No eating.
That's incredible.
No bathroom. No smoke breaks. And he would just go. And we would have to be like, okay, George, you got to go. You have a panel at 4:00, or hey, it's you've got to. Okay, all right, I'll go. Sorry, guys. George was there. George loved his fans.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
And that's what made him so special, is that you talking to George, he wasn't looking at the line. He wasn't looking at anything. He was listening to you.
Sure.
And you could have an entire conversation with him like you were just having coffee with a buddy.
Yeah.
And after meeting George the first time and realizing how much of a good person he was, it just made you love him more. And I hate seeing friends and people saying they never got a chance to meet him, because honestly, you missed out. We just passed the anniversary of his passing, which was 7 years ago. And to me personally, it was still the most devastating day that I've ever had to live through. I don't like living in a world without George. No. We lost a visionary who, when you look at some of his films, like Diary, with social media and stuff happening, he was 10 years ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And a lot of his films were like that. When we talk about the excess of the 80s, when you look at stuff like American Psycho,
exactly,
and he was doing that in the 70s.
Yeah.
He was looking at, he could see trends. He could see, George loved watching the news. George was always in tune to what was going on in the world, and just the way his brain was wired. He could see things happening now that wasn't going to be on the forefront of everybody else for quite a long time. And his last 3 films, I think it dismissed a lot for some of the story. But when you look at the context and the subtext,
Land of the Dead.
Land of the Dead was super, ahead of its time. Diary, Survival of the Dead.
Yeah.
We hate our neighbor. Why? We don't know. We just hate them, and we're going to continue to fight. Look at the world we're in now. Right. George saw all of that. And the fact that he was just one of the most normal guys you could have met, just really he was special. And I don't think we're ever going to have someone like him again. And if we do, we need to recognize that prior to them not being here with us.
Yeah, that's that's hard when it's something that you know, any relationship you have with anybody, when you lose it like that is a very difficult thing. And, you know, that's a unfortunate thing for everybody, for family of his and for his fans and everything. And yeah, I remember when I heard about it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. You know, but the thing is, you have, you know, you're, like you said, I got to meet him, you got to work with him, obviously. You know, we're lucky we got to do those things, and we're happy we did. And, you know, that's the thing, like artists like that, his work is there now forever. So it's always there. You're always going to see, you can go turn anything on and watch George Romero whenever you want, which is great. That's the wonderful thing. It's not lost, right? He's not here, but his work is always here. And that's a wonderful thing. So,
and people are still really discovering a lot of his films. I mean, I remember right after George passed, a lot of people that I knew were just discovering Knight Riders and Martin. And I was like, Martin. If you guys watch Knight Riders, that's kind of like an autobiography. You know, Ed Harris, the character of King Billy, was George fighting the Hollywood system because he was, you know, he'd been invited to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And he didn't want it. He knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And Tom's character of Morgan is what would happen if he did become part of that machine, lose part of his identity, become part of this big machine that's just going to chew you up and spit you out for the next dollar.
Pretty much.
And, you know, when you know, Martin was another, and Martin was George's favorite film that he'd ever done.
Martin.
But, you know, like when you look at films like Bruiser, losing your identity, you know, George, between The Dark Half and Bruiser, George had spent most of the 90s, you know, doing a lot of pay for play stuff. Yeah. I mean, how many scripts did George write that we hear that he was attached to that never got made? Frankenstein, Resident Evil, which my friend Brandon Salisbury just did a great documentary on, you know, George's unproduced for Resident Evil script.
Yeah.
You know, so all of these things that George had been attached to, he I want to say stayed true to himself, but he knew what would happen if he would become part of that machine. And it would take away. No, it wasn't what he wanted at all. So he stayed the course, and he made, I think, the quality of movies, the stories that meant the most to him, that he could feel, you know, as a director, you want to make a certain type of movie.
Yeah.
You want to have a signature. Yeah. And I think George knew that if Hollywood got him, they would just use the name, but not let him be himself. Yeah. And he couldn't do that. And I applaud him for that. Now there's now
huge.
You know, when you look at someone like a Tarantino or a Nolan who've got a style that are commercially successful,
right?
They have that ability, but that's a 1% within a 1% segment of society.
Yeah.
You know, we look at a Nolan film, like that's a Nolan film, or that's a Tarantino film, or you know, a Cameron film. Like there's certain things that they bring, but they're so overly successful commercially. They get a blank check.
Yeah.
You know, George's biggest budget was Land of the Dead, and it was like 15-20 million.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. I don't know.
That's a micro budget.
He was not making. It was
blockbuster
films.
Yeah, no. You know, most of George's films were made for like $1 million.
Yeah, they were low.
That's nothing.
Him doing his thing, and that's, like you say, applaud him for that. That's a really cool thing. That's a really cool thing. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna save the best for last. So, any good movie always needs a remake, right? So 2004 comes along, and like you, I probably saw those teasers and trailers and stuff on TV, and I went, "Oh my god, this looks so cool!" And I think it was, you know, on I forget what channel, whatever they show that little teaser piece, and we thought we got.
So on USA.
Was it USA? Okay.
Yeah, they showed the first 5 minutes,
and my friends and I were like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be great!" So we're there like opening night. And those first like 10 minutes of that movie are so awesome, and they're so wild, they're so violent, and I love it. And I am a fan of the remake. I enjoy it. I find the zombies to be scary this time. Not that, look, believe me, I'm not knocking. I love the original Dawn of the Dead. It's a great movie. But I enjoy the sequel. I thought it was good. I thought there were parts that I liked about it. I liked that there was more. The fast zombies were cool with me. It was a little bit different, I thought. I enjoyed it. I know you do not feel the same way. Please, this is your soapbox to tell us your thoughts on the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Growing up, my parents always told me, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So but I'm a grown adult now.
Yeah, you are.
All right. The Dawn of the Dead remake.
There we go.
Let me preface by saying this. I saw the same preview as you.
Yep.
And I initially was like, all right, this actually looks pretty badass. Like you know, the best part of the Dawn of the Dead remake stops when Johnny Cash stops singing.
So that opening was so perfect with that. And just those shots of the news and the guy up on the podium. Do we know if they're dead or alive? We don't know. Do we know if blah, blah?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. That opening is so good. Oh.
Yeah. Zack Snyder, I always joke, is my mortal enemy. He has tackled the two things in this world that mean the most to me are George Romero and Superman.
Yeah, and he pretty much took care of those.
My son's first name is Reeve. He's
your Lex Luthor, isn't he?
He is my Lex Luthor. Yeah. So let me preface by saying this. I met Zack Snyder about a month before the Dawn remake came out. Him and some of the cast were at a Chiller Theater convention in New Jersey. Now Zack's a very nice guy. I don't have any ill will towards him.
Yeah. It's his movie. It's okay.
His view on the subject matter is different. Now, when we go back and look at this movie was written by James Gunn.
That's right.
Guardians of the Galaxy and Superman.
Slither? Didn't he do the Slither movie?
He did Slither.
Yeah, that was a weird movie.
So when I go back, my brain is trying to reconcile the fact that this script was written by James Gunn, who I'm actually excited for to be tackling Superman, who was tackled by Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And I have all the faith in the world in James Gunn. I'm actually excited for the Superman movie. I'm like literally going to take the day off from work for that movie.
I love it.
But watching that preview, I was like, okay, now fast zombies suck. Plain and simple.
What about 28 Days Later? What are your thoughts
Not
on them?
zombies.
They're infected. Okay,
they're not zombies. They're infected. It works. It's totally fine. They're infected. They're infected with rage. Rage provides you with an adrenaline. You're going to you're going to go.
Good answer.
So totally different. Love 28 Days Later. One of the best movies. Just awesome. Totally, absolutely adore that movie.
Yes.
You know, I was never on board with fast zombies because the scary part of zombies is they are slow moving.
And they're going to get you. They're going to get you. It's like Michael Myers. He's never going to run, but he's going to get you and kill you. Yes, he's going to get you. You can't get away.
So I was like, all right. So we have fast zombies. What I like about the Dawn remake is I like the cinematography.
Yeah, it looks good.
I thought it shot very well. I like the soundtrack,
the color,
the music
palette.
Yeah, the
nice,
color palette. Yeah, it's early 2000s.
Kinda,
it's got this early 2000s grit to it that I really enjoy. But the fact is that the Dawn of the Dead remake is hollow, meaning everything that was
music-wise. What did you think of the come on, get down with the sickness?
Oh, the Richard Cheese version of Down with the Sickness. One of the best covers ever.
Yeah, when they're just blowing and they're writing down the names of like the celebrity zombies and they're just blasting them. Yeah, Rosie O'Donnell. That was awesome.
Yeah. No, again, there's a lot of great parts to the Dawn remake.
The zombie baby, come on, man. No, didn't do it for you.
It didn't do it for me.
Oh, it was baby.
It would have been better had she not given birth and it just stayed in there after, kind of like leaving that alone. Like we ain't touching that. Like we ain't going there. It was kind of a shock value thing again. Yeah. So trying because I love Dawn so much.
Right.
A lot of people think I should automatically love the remake.
No, that's not true.
And I don't. Well, I think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people put stock in that. Well, if you love this, then you'll love this.
Yeah.
It didn't do really anything past remaking a film that is revered by folks. And we were kind of talking about this before we came on the air, is no one's referring back to Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead as a pivotal moment in zombie film history.
No.
We're not there's no immediate Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead was great because it got me into filmmaking. Now, not saying any film has to do that for it to be considered great. To me, it's hollow. We have zombies. We have a shopping mall. That is it in relation to Dawn of the Dead. When you look at the characters in the Dawn remake, do you really care about any of them?
No, but what's his face from that Modern Family show? You definitely wanted him to die. You hated him.
Well, yeah, you wanted him to die.
That was good.
Ving Rhames. We love Ving Rhames, but I mean, his character as Ken was pretty much, he was like, fuck y'all. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to get my brother. Like, screw the
Yeah.
rest of you guys. I'm out of here.
Right.
So, I mean, there was one or two people you kind of cared about, but they didn't really I cared most about Andy in the gun store. Like,
Yeah.
dude had like, he could have
Yeah.
survived there. As long as he
Right.
had food, he could have survived there for years.
Right.
You kind of cared about him because he was by himself and you
Yeah,
never
he
really
was.
get to know him. So there's elements that I feel could have been tweaked or changed and could have made us care a little bit more.
Okay.
And I think that lack of compassion and getting people to care about these characters, because it was a beat by beat. It was like, okay, we got to get to this point, then we're going to get to this point, we're going to have this big action sequence. There's a lot of great action in in it. I think that lasts like 20
gas
minutes.
Tank, the
Yeah,
LP,
yeah.
the cylinder.
Like, yeah, I think a
Oh,
lot of
man.
that is fun.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't. It is a popcorn movie.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
it's gonna fulfill your appetite for a while.
Yeah.
But are you gonna go back to it and think, what is this? What is this film's place in history? Now, not every
No.
film has to have that. Let me preface that. But when you remake, which a lot of people put, depending on what list you read on Google this week, it's one of the top 3 zombie films ever made. It's either 1, 2, or 3, depending on who you're talking to. It's the only one that's really been remade. Tom did Night, but that was
Yeah.
kind of
That's
an
right.
in-house remake.
That's right. Yes, it was.
Columbia financed it, but I mean that was with Tom.
That's right.
They're not remaking Return of the Living Dead. We
No.
don't have anything like that, which kind of surprises me. Like, if you're going to remake a zombie film with the celebration that the Return of the Living Dead gets, where's the Return of the Living Dead remake? But no, because they knew, they being Universal and Strike, they knew that there was money to be made with the name.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, because it's so big. That's right. Yeah.
So they knew they were going to get X number of dollars as a base opening weekend. They figured, okay, we're going to get 75 to 100 million on this movie on its theatrical run based on the name alone, because us fans are going to go see it. And I did. I saw it in theater. I saw it 3 times.
Yeah.
I
think we were there opening night. I think for
yeah,
sure.
I went to an early advance screening down in Maryland. And then I saw it. I think I saw it opening weekend maybe twice, or at least one opening weekend and one weekend after, because it was one of those, like, I needed to continually see it.
So did you dislike it immediately?
I didn't love it.
Okay.
I think after seeing it the second or third time, and I kind of sat down, I'm like, okay, how do I feel about this?
What are we doing here? Yeah.
Yeah, and now again, I'm probably gonna get flack for this. I own it. I own it on DVD. I own it on Blu-ray. I own it on 4K, and a lot of that is, at some point, George was getting money for the rights. Rubenstein was taking care of that.
Right.
But again, I've been friends with Ken Foray and Tom Savini for 25 years. So I have friends in it. It's
part of the legacy, right?
Exactly. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
It has attached itself to my favorite film.
Yes.
I can't avoid it.
It's part of it. It is.
It's part of the collection. I watch it probably like once a year. I usually turn it on in March when it celebrates its anniversary. I'm like, all right, let's go put it on. It's not one of those, like, I wish it would go away.
Right.
I just don't know if I will ever understand why people say it is as good as it is. And again, that's art. Some people are like, Dawn of the Dead's not as good as you think it is. And I'm like, that's okay. It resonates
It's all subjective.
to me.
It's all subjective.
But then I kind of lean on it. I was like, but we talk about George's film and not Zach's. And I wish, and again, I don't know what Zach's intention was, or I don't even want to say Zach because he directed the film, but James Gunn. What were James Gunn's thoughts on the original Dawn of the Dead, and what kind of mandate was he under to deliver a film that was zombies in a shopping mall? Was that really what he was told to do? And did he watch the original Dawn of the Dead, or did he just be like, okay, I'm going to do this? So there's a lot of factors out there that I would love, if I ever got to sit down with James Gunn, I would probably talk to him about the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Pick his brain on that.
Pick his brain on that. Yeah, exactly.
That's fair.
It's
fair.
It's one of those, like, I've always come to accept that it's never going to go away.
No, it's not.
And it's one of those where I may not, again, I don't hate it. but I don't revere it. It exists. I understand why people love it. There's nothing wrong with liking a film that I don't care for. There's parts of it that I like. I think the parts are better than the whole.
Okay.
There needed to be tweaks. There's parts that I really really enjoy,
Sure. Like
but
the beginning, we
it's
said the opening.
exactly.
Everybody loves
But
that. Yeah.
it's like stopping at McDonald's for a quick meal to stave off the hunger versus going home and making yourself a nice
It's the
a
recipe
nice
thing, right? Like you were
exactly
saying.
it's a recipe. It's
Right.
like we have zombies in a shopping mall. It's like, well, I'm gonna make your mom's recipe for dinner tonight.
Right.
Okay, great. And then when you get served it, it's like, well, this isn't what my mom's recipe is. Well, yeah, well, it called for salt and pepper, and I put the salt and pepper in. Everything else I changed to make it a little bit different. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make it my mom's recipe then.
No, it doesn't. You know
So
what?
that's how I've always seen it.
I love Pet Sematary, the original film. I met the cast. One of the coolest posters I have is signed by all of them. I read the book like 3 times. I love it. I love it. I love it. And man, I went to see that remake, and it was a piece of garbage, and I hated it, and it stinks. And it's just like, but it's part of like the legacy of the whole deal, right? Like you said, you just got to deal with it. It's not going to go away. It's just there. So, well, there you go, folks. There's Dawn of the Dead, 1978, and Matt's thoughts on the remake from 2000.
And these thoughts are my own. Like let me preface this. Like I will talk to anybody about this at any point.
That's okay.
And again, I love a good-natured banter.
Yeah.
You know, I'm willing to have my balls busted and give
Of
in
course.
kind. You
Of
know,
course.
it's and that's the thing is like neither film takes away from the other.
No, it's all
And
good.
and it's you know when you remake a film 25 years later of a film that has basically been revered and put on a pedestal from day one.
That's
It's
a lot. It's a big deal, man. That's
It's
lot
a
of
huge
yeah.
task. It's
Yeah.
not like you're remaking a film that no one has seen.
No, it's you're gonna get a lot, and it could end up screwing up your career, quite frankly. Because
I mean,
you know,
think
who
about
knows?
2004. What other film did we get in 2004? Shaun of the Dead
Great film. We did a great
Shaun
episode
of the Dead
on this program about that. Yeah,
was a love letter
hilarious.
to
Yeah.
George and Dawn.
Great movie. Great movie. Yeah.
So you have both ends of the spectrum on this. You have a love letter done by someone who just absolutely loved the material
Yeah.
and did their own thing as a romantic comedy with zombies.
Yeah.
And then you have the machine of Hollywood pumping out.
Right.
Which
There's
one did
There's your
George love?
difference, right? There's your difference.
George used to wear a Shaun of the Dead pin on his vest.
See, there you go, man.
It would say "Aim for the Head." Shaun of the Dead. He
Yeah.
wore it for years.
That's great.
That's how much. I mean, he put Edgar and Simon in Land of the Dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
He never had any ill will with the Dawn remake.
No.
You know, and people would. I never did have George sign a Dawn remake poster. I was like,
You don't need it.
I was like,
Yeah.
I thought about it. I took a poster to a convention one time, and I was like, I've got 15 George Romero auto. I don't need him on this. But it was always neat to see people bring it up to him,
Sure.
and you would see his face. He would kind of smile, be like, "Yeah, I know this isn't mine, but people want it." But if that Dawn remake was the gateway to George,
There you go.
I think George understood that.
That's a great point, right? Because you got a lot of younger folk maybe who never, and they realize, oh, this is a remake of an older film. And this is what I tell people all the time, too. When I talk about one of these, Day or Dawn, whatever, I tell them, yes, it's good. You should watch it. However, you need to watch the trilogy. You need to watch all 3. You need to watch Night of the Living Dead, Dawn, and Day. You need to watch all of those. Now, I encourage you to watch all of Romero, but you need to watch those 3 to be like a well-versed zombie aficionado. You got to watch those.
But if you want to watch, if you really want to get to know George, watch the non-zombie films.
Oh, sure. I mean, you should watch everything. Yeah.
Martin,
Oh, yeah.
Knight Rider's Creep Show, and I'm going to throw it in there because I'm contractually obligated to, is Bruiser.
Did he do Dark Half?
Yes, he did.
Okay, I love that book. Is fantastic, I thought, and I liked the movie. He did do that, didn't he? That's right.
Yeah,
Yes,
and that was
okay.
that was
Yeah,
that
good.
was his third studio picture that
Yeah.
he made in 91 but didn't come out until 93
I
because
liked
Orion had gone bankrupt.
I liked it.
And a couple of years ago, in the midst of COVID, me and a bunch of friends decided to do a big Dark Half location tour. We drove out.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh,
oh
nice.
yeah. It's down in Washington where they filmed the Night remake. It's only about 45 minutes south of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So
cool.
I started watching it
Never
really
thought
for the
about that.
first time in a lot of years, and I was like, man, I really love the Dark Half.
Did you read the book?
Yeah, years ago.
I love the book.
Yeah,
That was really
it's
good.
been one of those like I need to go back and reread
Yeah.
because it's been a minute.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good not a lot of good stories, but there's a lot that I still wish we could figure out what happened between Tim Hutton and George, because they really had a lot of animosity towards each other. Well, let me put it that way. I think George had a lot of, he was trying to figure out how Timothy Hutton was approaching this role.
Okay.
And Timothy not caused problems, but made it harder for George to make his movie. So there's a lot of stories there that I don't know if we'll ever know, but I would always love to.
Yeah.
So The Dark Half has a very intriguing backstory from the start. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why George decided to never work with a major studio again.
It seems like he never did in the first. So anyway, so he.
Yeah. You know,
Right.
when you look at Monkey
gut.
Shines, Two Evil Eyes, and Dark Half,
Yeah.
are three. Monkey Shines. I love. I don't think there's anything wrong with Monkey Shines.
Ever, God.
I know. I just finally got to another location when I went out to Pittsburgh last month for Monkey Shines. Like, I love the underseen George films. If you want to know the real George, watch the underseen ones. Like, obviously, Creepshow is great because it's him and Stephen King. You could never go wrong with the Stephen King George Romero
what's
thing.
better than that, right?
But when you look at something like Martin, that just needs to be talked about. And Night Riders, those two films. If you want to know George as a filmmaker, watch those two films because they're really his heart and soul. And show, Martin was, right before Dawn. So you started to see a little bit of his change from his, between 68 and 76, those films he made there. But then you start to see Martin, you start to see that, from 77 to 85, George hit on all cylinders with everything he did. There weren't really any missteps. And I think he batted 1,000 for those 7 years. And if you're going to watch his trilogy, just seek him out. He doesn't have that many films.
No, not really.
And I always say, like, a lesser George zombie movie is still better than 90% of the zombie films we've gotten since his last one. Do yourself a favor. Check out the last 3 of the zombie trilogy.
Yeah.
Especially watch them with the lens of today.
Yeah.
And you'll see what George was going for.
For sure. The man had an amazing career, right? It was fabulous. So, and I think Dawn of the Dead, I think we've gone over everything we can with it. You know what? Go and watch it. It's great. Watch all 3, like you said. Check everything else he's done. Time for a George Romero marathon, I guess. But so, Matt, where can everybody find all of your stuff to keep up with you, and if they want to keep talking Dawn of the Dead with you too?
Oh, you can just look up my name on all the social medias: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just look up my name, Blair Witch Experience. .com. I do the Blair Witch events, so you type in my name, you'll find me. I'm not that hard to find. Drop me an email, drop me a message. I'll chat with anybody about anything film related. I just love to connect with folks, even if our opinions are different. Let's have a good chat and let's have some fun with it. Like, that's the problem, is we need to have more fun when we talk about films.
Make movies, yes, for sure. And of course, everyone knows where to find us. At the Scary Movie Project on Instagram. That's where you'll get the most out of us. Email us at thescarymovieproject@gmail.com. Keep listening on the website, scarymovieproject.com, of course. Listen, follow us. We got lots of fun stuff to talk about. We'll talk zombies whenever you guys want. Fast zombies, slow zombies. What do we like better? The argument that could go on forever, I suppose. But for now, that's where we'll wrap it. So, Matt, thank you very much for being on. We really appreciate this. And remember, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
You got it.
The Scary Movie Project podcast. Learn more at thescarymovieproject.com.